Good evening. My name is Barbara Sorrell, and I have two children in the Danbury School District. And my question is, what have we done to reach out to the community and the businesses in the area? I mean, we certainly have large businesses, Boehringer, GE, Praxair, for things, interesting things like maybe internships at the high school level or support, whether it's monetary or volunteers or et cetera. Thank you.
I know that the board has done a nice job at putting together a committee that's been out meeting with various business entities throughout the city and the greater Danbury area, really, since education is really a regional issue as much as it's a local issue. But I think when you talk about mentoring and partnering, that there's some interest there with various organizations. Nobody wants to write a check for operational costs. One of the reasons is that these businesses are just as stressed as the homeowners are. And so what happens is, and I've had high-level meetings with BI and other companies in the area, they're interested in, maybe, having some employees go over and visit and talk a little bit about what they do, or maybe adopting, not in a literal sense, but sort of adopting a school or a building or a classroom, and being there and mentoring them about what they do and do job visits and things like that. The companies themselves, though, are not interested in writing checks. It doesn't mean we're not going to keep asking, because that's what you pay me to do, is to terrorize these people, so I'll do it. But it's really tough to get a nickel out of these folks for this kind of, just because they're getting beaten up in so many different directions, from nonprofits that have lost their funding, from other organizations. So it's been, I understand they're making billions, but in their environment, they look at every line item as a spreadsheet, and they say, we're going to cut back on our giving this year, and it's been unfortunate. But we'll continue, and SAL does have a nice group of people that go out and meet and sort of tell the story of the Danbury Public Schools. We also have an education foundation, which we don't hear a lot about, but we fund, and I personally raise that money. We've got about $70,000 or $80,000 in that account right now, and we fund programming for teachers, programming for students, IT investments, mini grants up to about $5,000 or $6,000 for various programs. And every spring I come in and distribute 4 or 5 checks to the staff members who write their grant proposals. So we're trying to do everything we want. That hasn't taken off as big as I would have liked. I was hoping to have like millions in that account right now. And at some point we really got to find that one company, and it happens. I mean, I remember, Bill wasn't here, but when I was teaching, Union Carbide was still in existence, and they had a CEO that was very interested in public education. And he started the Danbury Business and School Mentoring Collaborative that kind of the Chamber has since adopted. It's become its own program because he was very interested in what was happening in Danbury's public schools. I do get frustrated by companies that do a lot of their giving, that do business here, but do a lot of their giving outside of Danbury. One particularly very large multinational corporation, who shall remain nameless, endowed a chair of $1 million to UConn. That's great. I mean, UConn, hey, I'm a Husky fan. They're playing right now. I'm missing the first half, but and that's good. But we got a great university right here in Danbury, and we got public schools that could really do a lot with $1 million. I know another multinational corporation that funds 5 scholarships for science in Ridgefield Public Schools. No disrespect to Ridgefield Public Schools, wonderful people. But when you look at the poverty levels compared to the two, I think 5 of our students would be much more needy than kids going to Ridgefield High. No disrespect to Ridgefield High, I know I'll get a lot of emails on this. So, so you look at that kind of giving and you say, look, we need to reprogram this a little bit. You're doing business in our community. We fund your infrastructure. Your employees are here all the time, and we'd like you to give back a little bit here. And we try and make that argument really all the time to these companies. But it's really rough sledding right now. And just one other thing for food for thought. I'm definitely not trying to be argumentative, but just so I want you to understand how we think when we do a lot of this decision making. One thing is, the city council and the mayor's office cannot tell the school board how to spend their money. We can ask, but we cannot tell them they can spend it any way they like. So we only appropriate a block of money that then these folks will divide up as they best see fit to deliver the educational instructions towards their stated goals. So I just want to be clear. So people come into me all the time and say, well, why can't you fund this nurse? And I go, I can't do that. I can give them the money, but it doesn't mean the nurse is going to get funded. And then secondly is the issue of 50% free and reduced lunch. It is disturbing. I think that's a direct reflection of the economy. Every parent who qualifies for free and reduced lunch must fill out a documentation as to what their income is. But that also tells us that if 50% of the kids are on free and reduced lunch and qualify with those low income levels, that means the parents aren't doing it very well, and that their ability to pay has become less, not more, in terms of what they can pay more in taxes. So if you're renting, you know your landlord's just going to pass that right along to you. So, you know, we have to ask the question: Can these people afford another $100 a month in rent, or another $120 a month in rent? If you own a home, can you afford another $700 or $800 a year in taxes? Those are the hard, tough questions that we have to ask ourselves, and it's not any fun. It was great in '04. Look at these numbers on the sheet. I was throwing money at you. I couldn't spend it fast enough. 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, and the enrollments only went up maybe 100 students. Maybe one year went down about 50 students. So it wasn't tied to enrolling students. It was just the council and myself wanted to fund education. And then you look at the last 3 years, oh, we've only got 8.8% increase. That's true, but when you add it in totality, you see these numbers. We've tried to put money there. When we've had it, we've given it to the Board of Ed because we think it's the best money that we can spend in terms of our children.
Andy does some work for us with business. You want to?
I'd like to echo what the mayor said about corporations and them being in dire straits right now as well. Through our Adopt a School program, we have been challenged with making those connections with the companies, but now the companies are beginning to call us to say, what can we do? I'm proud to announce that Sodexo has given money to each school, was given $1,000 to spend on whatever the principal needed for that. We have now some of the companies coming and saying, we want to give you more mentors, and we do have a school-wide mentoring program. We are working with 2 large companies right now to bring in another real program, which is the Scholastic reading program to the schools before and after school. So we are making those connections. But the one thing that we find with the Adopt a School and getting the businesses on board is relationship building. And that takes a lot of time. So I ask any of you that are out there that work in a company, HR, any of those departments, you have somebody that's interested, a company, even a small business that's willing to do something for the schools, please have them contact me. We have a wish list that has been put together by all the schools, and we can make that fit. So we do have those programs in place. They just take a long time because it's relationship building.
Hi. My name is Erwin Fox. I'm a parent of 4 students in the Danbury school system, and I basically have a question about process. Looking at the process documents, the timeline for the budget ends with the City Council adoption of the budget. Based on what I've heard this evening, it doesn't sound likely that the taxpayers can afford what's been presented so far, and all the work is continuing to kind of bridge the gaps. There's likely to be some type of gap at the end of the day. So my question is, the timeline ends with the City Council adoption of the budget, but the document doesn't go beyond that step in terms of what the board has to do following that step in the process. So for information, what will the board be doing after that step in the process? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox served as our chairman of the board, and thank you for bringing it up because that's been an issue that we've worked out the last few years. What will happen is this: as we develop our budget now and give it to the city then will go through it. We'll have some conversation with the city. There'll be some special committees going on, as you said. Then it'll be adopted in May. After the adoption, then the board's going to have to sit down. They'll be asking us for recommendations. So at the board meetings that we have coming up in May, and possibly workshops, that's where they'll be discussed. But that's too late. The last 3 years, as Mark said, ever since the budgets have been going in a way that's been much more frugal, we have listed a number of things that we would need to do. And we maintained that list. But we did the last board meeting, particularly with new board members, to go through after last year, after we were allocated our money from the city, what happened. We had a number of cuts that we had to go through. We kept that information from the year before, so we've compiled this list of possibilities. The board is going to give us their goal. We have goals of what we want to achieve, and then prioritize what's on that list. For example, on On that list, 2 years ago, we had our language program, our industrial tech program, and other things that we considered 2 years ago and didn't do, we did last year. We reduced electives at the secondary school, didn't do it 2 years ago, did it last year. Walk into our study halls, it's really kind of alarming to me to walk in the study hall with 400 or 500 kids, 600 kids. And the reason why they're in there is one reason. There aren't enough electives. We knew that going in there. We tried to avoid doing that, but we couldn't help it, so we're doing that. Those things, you know, were done in advance. And I tell parents what happened. The board had asked me to go out and see, well, what about if we would go out and have a company come in and redo, take care of our grounds? Well, about 5, 6 years ago, that was looked at. It was determined it wasn't the best thing to do, wasn't the cheapest, only because we're down so many. So that's been something that is on the list, but not really serious. But what's serious on that list, anything that's before 8 o'clock and after 3 o'clock. That would be all of our co-curricular activities. We've stayed away from that. We're at a tipping point for 3 years. But depending on the size of the reduction, if we reduce, you know, we need to keep a teacher in the classroom, a principal in the hallways and in their offices, and nurses there. There's a list there that says, okay, if you have to make a cut, this is what's going to happen. So we've maintained that list. We'll be sharing with the board. The board met the other day and gave us some priorities to look at. So we'll be talking with them. And I would hope at the board meetings the next month and a half, 2 months, we'll be talking about those things so parents aren't surprised when, in fact, in May, when we get our allocation, that we have to do some reductions. So that's what I have. Anything else you want to add to that? Is that about Gladys, anything to that point? Oh, okay. She said I did it well. I just want to say thank you, Mr. Fox.
Well, since you set the stage with co-curricular, my name is Michael Hyatt, parent of 3 kids, 2 in the high school, 1 here in Rogers Park. First of all, I want to commend all of you, your board, Dr. Sal, and everyone else who's fought really hard to keep the school programs alive and funding the education that we need. I've attended a lot of board meetings, and it is really a struggle, and I see, organizations outside the school system, managing finances and struggling with that. So, to lighten things up a little bit, co-curricular. This past year, we almost lost freshman sports. It got a lot of people up in arms. People rallied together, started doing fundraising. Thank goodness Mayor Bowden found $70,000 and helped to fund that. And I see it's coming back into this year's budget. But during that process, 2 main programs were cut. One was hockey and one was the high school competitive ski team. I should make that point. It's a varsity sport. It was a club this year. Without funding, the ski team specifically went out and raised money to keep the program alive. It's been around for many years. I want to announce tonight that the Danbury Ski Club, surrounding towns, and many people in this city are subsidizing and donating $2,500 to close out the gap that they found to spend to cover the expenses for the ski club. So 2 questions. 1, how was the decision made in all the backroom discussions around sports programs that those 2 programs specifically were left off the list? And my second question would be, how can we as citizens, parents, and educators prevent that from happening again? And what's the best process, to use Irving's words, to make sure that our voices are heard and how people are rallying behind certain individual interests? So those are my questions.
Thank you. I'm glad they raised the money. The way that decision was made, was going back again 3 years ago, but I asked the high school principal at that time and the athletic director at that time to look at co-curricular activities along with the clubs, see in fact which ones we had to offer. And if we didn't offer them, what's popular is pay to play. Now I will tell you, without a doubt, pay to play in cities really don't work. You spend more time trying to collect than you actually collect. And that's a real issue, just so you know. But there are towns that have tried that, so not knowing where we're going, so well, let's do some research around. And so we've collected information, and we keep collecting. The most successful program is they have limits on parents, how many sports they can participate. There's some towns that pay $450 a sport, others $100 a year, 3 sports, and so we looked at all of that. Then they looked at what we had to offer. So CISC, anything that was covered under that was covered. That's what we did. So last year when it came down, we were in May? We needed to look at something to do some reduction, and freshman sport was thought of. Now, the reason why freshman sport was actually picked was that, one, there's a lot of activities for youngsters at that age that could participate that the community provides. So by reducing it at the freshman level, it was felt that, yeah, it wasn't the best thing to do, but youngsters had an opportunity to participate. Secondly, anybody that was exceptionally talented had the opportunity to go into a JV or a varsity very possible. So even though they reluctantly wanted to do it, they felt that would be the least impact place to do it. In talking to the athletic director, the hockey team, by the way, we never funded the hockey team. The only thing that the board accepted from the hockey team about 4 years ago was that we would accept them as a team representing us, but that there was no funding attached to that representation. I know they collaborate with 2 other towns, I believe, and the parents basically pay for that. The ski team was a club, a wonderful club with kids that competed on that, but it was not CIIC. Therefore, that was not one of the ones that we were going to support because it didn't meet that criteria. And not a good decision, but based on if they were in CIIC and they were beyond varsity, they would probably maintain the varsity and cut the freshmen. But they didn't have that option. It's a club. So that's why it happened. And I think the board then did allow the fundraising and participated in trying to support getting information out for that. But that's how the cut was made. Right now, the high school principal and the athletic director, the department chairman, and a few others are looking at, well, if we do have to reduce, what would it look like? What makes the most sense? How can we provide opportunities and yet not impact the rest of the budget if in fact we have to go to another system, pay to play? Or, I haven't heard the board talk about eliminating. If anything, the next step would be pay to participate. But, I'm very cautious about that because most cities don't have a lot of success with that. There's a question in the back.
Hi, my name is Tara Curtin. I have a daughter at Pembroke Elementary, and I also have a daughter at the Magnet School. I first want to say thank you for all that you guys do for our children. I don't know if you guys hear thank you enough, so I do want to say that. I also want to say I'm new to the whole having kids in school at all. So with that said, I do understand that Pembroke School was promised, if you will, use the term lightly, money for their roof. We have had quite a few years, I guess, of faulty roofing, if you will. And so just recently at the most recent PTO meeting that we went to, there was actual pictures of tiles that had fallen that day right next to the tile sitting in a classroom. And all the teacher did was literally pick up the kids, move them to a corner, and kept teaching. Kudos to that person. However, our children are now, they're in an environment that is now not safe and secure, and potential water damage is underneath the rugs, especially mold, bacteria, growth, whatnot. I know the air has been tested and other things have been tested. This is a huge concern. What really shocked me was when someone told me that although we were supposed to get a roof last year and now it was supposed to be this year, our promise has been actually shifted over, and I guess another school is getting the roof over ours. And again, we have tiles falling. We spend $35,000 in repairs on our roof. We also have tiles that, and someone's going to shoot me for this, but tiles are being replaced daily by our faculty or custodial faculty, just so we have an image of a nice clean school, when in fact we have so many repairs that need to be done on our roof that need to provide an environment for our children that can be safe. In addition to that, my second comment or question statement would be keeping our children safe and secure. I don't know how many people here go down Route 37. Coming directly out of Pembroke Elementary School, it is a very dangerous situation. People fly through there right in front of the prison, and on numerous occasions we have had accidents, one including a school bus, and I'm just waiting for someone to actually say, well, we don't have money to do it, but once somebody is fatally, unfortunately injured or a tragedy happens, that's when someone's going to step up and tell me that we now have money for a caution light. I can understand not being able to have a police officer there every day, or how much money it costs in overtime for that. But this is, again, a safe and secure environment for our children, and I don't feel like the city is providing us that.
First question was related to the roof. First of all, let me just say, we never promised the roof to Pembroke last year. The roof issues were exacerbated last year with the amount of snow we had. Remember, I had to send a lot of our firefighters and our volunteer firefighters out to shovel a lot of the roofs off because we were concerned about any kind of potential collapse. So, starting right about this time last year, it became very apparent that we got some issues with Pembroke's roof. Pembroke's roof is covered under their warranty from the last time it was removed. We just had a consultant up on the roof who performed an ultrasound of the roof, which is a way to determine exactly the scope of work that you have to do. We're going to meet tomorrow about his report and his recommendations about how best to repair the roof. We plan on doing that as soon as feasible, as soon as it warms up and we're able to secure the funding, which we anticipate going to the council with about this year. It's one on our hit list, and no question about it, it'll get done. We may not have to replace the entire roof because of the warranty. That's one of the things that the ultrasound shows, and I'm going to be briefed on in the morning. So we very much are concerned about it, recognize it's a problem. It's my alma mater, so you're going to get a roof. Don't worry about that. As far
as you graduated from every school.
Can we do that? And DHS gets temporary volunteer. The other issue you mentioned was the traffic light. Unfortunately, 37 is a state road. It's not a city road. So we can't put a light up there, even if we have funding to do that. We have contacted the state. We've asked for them to study that particular intersection to see if they would be willing to put a state up, put some kind of caution light, or even a regular light. And we're waiting to hear back on the response to that. So we certainly, have heard some concerns from parents. I've called my office, and our response to that was to reach out to the state of Connecticut and see what thoughts they might have about how to slow traffic down around the school. So we're on it, but ultimately it's their responsibility.
Is there anything that the parents can do to assist getting the state to move along with that?
Jan Giegler, the state rep, I talked to her last week. She's working with the city and trying to get a light there, some kind of caution light. I know she was instrumental in getting that light up at Bud High School.
But it took her 3
years to do that.
And just to be fair, I mean, lights, believe it or not, are insanely expensive when you think about it. But a light like that will cost you $75,000. But it makes you want to pull your hair out. But my response to the state was, well, look, we don't want to be having this conversation, as you mentioned, after somebody gets hurt. So that's an awful cheap cost to make sure that the kids are safe and secure there. And that road traffic has picked up dramatically since when the school was sited there. I remember when that was built. And 37 was a sleepy road, and it's definitely picked up a lot of people coming from New Fairfield to get down the highway. It's very busy. So we're arguing hard for you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Garnett. I have 2 sons in the school system.
Is it on?
Yeah, just speak closer.
Hello?
Did it die?
Here.
I'll speak loud. I have two children in the Danbury school system. Because such a large chunk of this increase is around teachers' salary increases, I just wanted to ask for some more perspective on that. So, number one, the increase that's going in for this year, is that already contractually obligated? And then number two, can you also maybe speak to what's been going on maybe over the past 5 years? Have teachers been getting raises? Have they not been getting raises? Just so people are aware.
Good point. Let me do that because I felt our teachers, in all honesty, were very fair in terms of negotiations this year. Everybody worked real hard. Maybe you haven't heard the term win-win, and that is, let's look at, both sides winning. And really, the winning stands on one thing, the shoulders of the youngsters. So that's where we were coming at it. These contracts are not negotiated in a vacuum. Connecticut is a state, is a no-strike state. So everything goes to an arbitrator. So when you look at settlements and looking at things, sometimes you have to cut losses in terms of how we do things. But we think this year's settlement, particularly with a 2-year contract now, was a fair contract. I'm going to have Kim, our personnel director, talk about some history and what we're doing with it. But go ahead, Kim.
Many of you might remember last year we went to arbitration with the teachers and ended up with a 1-year contract with no increase. And the teachers actually replicate nearly all of our, if not all of our bargaining units for the last, at least in the 18 months that I've been here, if not longer. Many of our contracts are coming up for negotiation this spring, so in that respect, the numbers that you see in the budget are really estimates. There are contracts that will go back to the table with groups like the custodians, the paras and the tutors, the secretaries, school lunch, all of whom have had at least 1 year of a 0 increase, if not longer than that. So those groups have all sat flat for several years in a row and will now come to the table to negotiate their contracts. The numbers that we look at to the budget are estimates, and they depend not only on how those contracts are resolved. If they're settled through agreement, then we'll have a number. It may be 0, it may be something higher, but if they go to arbitration, then we're bound by whatever the decision of the arbitrator is. This year's contract with teachers was one that was, after long negotiations with them, many sessions, resulted in essentially a half-step increase in the first year and a half-step increase in the second year. So that, coupled with some pretty significant insurance concessions, health insurance concessions, resulted in, I believe in the first year, it's about a $400,000 impact on the budget. It's a collective bargaining group of over 800 teachers. So out of $110 million budget, it's a fairly small amount. But again, you'll see the personnel number is a moving target because there are so many contracts that are coming up for negotiation this spring. So we just try to estimate the best we can, and we'll see that number go up and down.
So, can you just jump in on the city side? Yeah, just to give you some perspective on the city side of what we've done. I mentioned some of the pension reform. All of our unions have agreed to take a 0 increase this year. My administrators haven't taken raises in 3 years, and we've got significant changes for healthcare. Healthcare is one of the biggest drivers you'll see in this number. Almost $4 million, a $7 million increase, is for raises and for increase to healthcare. So, and the average cost is about $25,000 per employee when you blend in, you know, whether they're single, whether they're married, or whether they're a family. So, some of those, the changes to the healthcare plan, the way I understand it, the city school side haven't been factored in yet, and they're estimating a number what that would be. That's a little concerning to me because that's just a huge increase. But there will be, you know, Cigna or Anthem, whoever does it, will always build in. They're going to get their 5 or 6% out of you before you add in any changes to the plan that you made. And I'm sure the board, and I can't speak for Ken, but I'm sure they'll bid it out, try to leverage Anthem against Cigna, try to get the best deal, and, you know, try to switch. But on the city side, we moved everybody, a lot of our employees, to a high deductible HSA style plan, which there is savings in those plans. You do have to modify and change behavior, right? I mean, what drives your cost is your risk assessment of your pool of employees. If they're making a lot of claims, there's a lot of illness there, your rates go through the roof. If people are living healthy, your rates drop pretty dramatically. So things like getting a yearly, you know, medical exam are now required in our plan. You know, we want you to go to the doctor once a year because they'll catch things, it's preventative, that you may not go for it. A whole bunch of other things, you know, if you don't smoke, you know, if you try to manage all kinds of parts of your health, we reward that now. But what you're asking, and I guess I'm kind of blabbering here, but I just want to share with you, changes like that in the municipal government and in the Board of Ed government, the Board of Ed side, are huge. It's a huge culture change for a group of cohort of employees, and I was one of them. I was a union member, still am, that just assume every year I get a raise, and just assume that every year I've got, you know, the gold-plated health care. So to now partner with those unions and say, look, here's the deal. Either we get these costs down, or we're going to have to start letting people off. So, you know, you're not going to have a job next year. That's been a tough message and sell, and it sometimes can be not confrontational, but certainly adversarial. And it's something we really worked hard to do. But it happens incrementally. It doesn't happen all in one negotiation. You keep working on the health care plan. You keep moving. We just got HSA out of our unions, and I proposed it 5 years ago. So, you know, it just takes a lot of time. Part of it is that we live in the bluest of the blue state. Up until the last 2 years, You didn't want to, you were the most pro-labor state in the union. You didn't want to go to arbitration. If you went to arbitration, they were going to give them more than what you had on the table. Now all the cities and towns want to go to arbitration because the rulings are much more favorable. All the rules are weighted against us. You know, people say, well, why don't you just not give them the raise? And then that's fine. You just can't do that. You know, you get taken to task. I always tell the story about the time I took away a vehicle from one of our employees, and he grieved it as a violation of the contract. This is your vehicle that you pay for, that gets taken out of town and spent in city gas. And 6 months later, when we got done with the arbitration, we lost. So not only did I have to give him a vehicle back, I had to give him a check for the time he used his own personal vehicle, and then 6 months for our wait for the arbitration payment. Yeah. So our hands are really tied, and it's really frustrating for us as managers not to, you know, we want to be partners with our employees. We don't want to beat up on them. We don't want to say they don't do a good job, because they do. But, you know, we have to make changes in the conditions of employment to be able to put more teachers in front of our kids and more textbooks, and for me to have more police officers. And it's a really hard thing to do. I mean, we're making headway, but it's difficult.
The one thing I'll leave you with on healthcare, the state of Connecticut, I think it's in the second year, has a state plan that we're seriously looking at. It seems to be a good plan for employees, plus one that seems to be one that we should consider. So the new Sarahs will be looking at that. What it does is help us with competition. Blue Cross was their competition was minor, but the more competition with healthcare, the better it is for us. So we'll see. That should we're hoping for that to be reduced, along with the co-premium shares that the teachers have given and the administrators. That amount should come down to help us to reduce the budget this year. Question in the back there, Kim?
Hi, my name is Wendy Wright, and I have a kindergartner and a preschooler who will be going to kindergarten in 2 years. And I guess I want to know if the preschool program that's offered by the city is a required program. Is that required by the state? And if not, first of all, I think somebody said we're spending $700,000 on that program. Honestly, I pay for my kids to go to preschool. I pay $5,000 to $6,000 a year for them to go twice a day, or twice a week. That $700,000 of preschool is not required by the state. Should be funding teachers, textbooks for the K-12 that is required by the state. I don't understand why we're putting so much money into that program. And if it is required and we do want to keep it, and I understand there are people that need it, why is it $250 a year for everybody? Should that not be sliding scale based on income? I mean, that would bring more money into that program if we decide to keep it. It just, just like they say of our sports. Sports is not part of education. It's not a requirement to go out into the real world. Why are we putting so much money? Pay as you go. If you can't afford to pay, you don't play. We need textbooks. We need teachers. We need classrooms. My kindergartner can't do artwork because freshmen needed their sports this year for $70,000. Art rooms, music rooms, to me that's much more important. We should be funding the core of education, not the extracurriculars.
Let me just start with the end in mind. My conversation around that is that the art is exceptionally important for the kindergarten. And what the youngsters take away from learning how to compete, learning how to respect each other, how to develop, how to make decisions, whether it's in a classroom or in a co-curricular activity of chess or a co-curricular activity of athletics, is as important as the art. It's a well-rounded education. And I can say that youngsters that go through programs like that make better decisions about their lifestyles and things that they do. That's all. And that's why I see it as co-curricular, not extracurricular. But you have an argument that many people have, and that is the sad thing. We're looking at now things that through that lens, and what we can provide fairly. So, that's something we have to consider. That's how I consider co-curricular. But I see Jim Maloney in the audience. Are you here, Jim? Maybe you want to respond to that section. Jim is the director of the program. Introduce yourself, sir.
I will. Thank you. Jim Maloney. I live in Danbury and have 3 youngsters who are alumni of the Danbury Public Schools. All of them are college graduates and are doing very well because of the education they got in Danbury. The Board of Education, the mayor, and the City Council have been very supportive of the preschool program. and very much appreciate it, and I've been an advocate for the preschool program for many years. There's two answers to the question about not what the school does for the preschool program, but rather what the preschool program does for the schools. And there's two answers to that question. One is it makes the cohort of kids coming into kindergarten and first grade stronger. It makes them stronger. That makes the classrooms stronger. That makes the other kids who are in the classrooms stronger. Okay? So it helps all of the kids, not just the kids in the program, but it helps the whole classroom. The second thing is, of course, it helps those individual youngsters as well, which then shows up in the mastery tests and all of the other assessments that are done by the school system to look at how their children have done. Let me give you just a couple of facts on that. Kids coming into the Head Start program, which is for low-income kids, that's why there is no charge. The federal government doesn't allow the Board of Ed to charge for it. Kids coming into the Head Start program at age 3 are typically functioning at age 2. So in 3 years of life, they've lost 1 year. That's the detriment that they come into the Head Start program. When they go out of the Head Start program at age 5, I'm not going to tell you they're fully caught up, but they've made tremendous progress. And that's tremendous progress that goes into, as I said, the advantage for all the other kids in the classrooms and the program and those children individually. Finally, the superintendent said that, I guess there's actually two final points. We also run the school readiness program, or at least a big chunk of it. And one of the good news is the governor, if he goes forward, is going to provide about another 500 preschool slots statewide. For Danbury, that might mean somewhere between 40 and 50 slots that are available. We've already been in communication with the preschool program at Danbury to say we've identified 2 additional classrooms that we can staff and make available. So we currently run 2 preschool school readiness programs at St. Peter's, and we believe there are another 2 classrooms that we can take advantage of. So assuming, and that's no cost to the city of Danbury, okay? It's state funded, entirely state funded. And hopefully, if those additional slots are available, we'll do everything we can to make sure Danbury gets its fair share of those additional slots, okay? Finally, the superintendent said, well, not every school system puts money into their Head Start program. That's true. And it shows in terms of the quality. We were very pleased that at the last national assessment of the Head Start program in Danbury, the Head Start program scored 100% on 1,700 federal performance standards. Okay, in other words, straight A's across the board for both the Head Start program and the Early Head Start program. Yes, you can run a cheap Head Start program. You can run a discounted Head Start program. But you don't get that kind of quality. You get what you pay for. And one of the real feathers in the cap of the Danbury school system, and in everything we do for education in Danbury, is we have an outstanding Head Start program. If there are any specific further questions, obviously I'm happy to.
I didn't understand that $250. I apologize. Can you?
When you go to the Norridge.
Can someone? I'm sorry, because. Joyce, do you have an answer to that?
You're speaking to the $250
For the model students, you know, when you bring in the model students, which, you know, everybody wants to get on because they only want to pay $250 a year and not pay $6,000 to a private school.
I'll explain that. In our special education preschool program, we are obligated by federal law to have typical peers serve as models for youngsters that have been determined eligible for special education services. So we do charge $250 for typical peers, the parents, to enroll in the program, and that's what's being referred to there, which is significantly lower than what other districts in Fairfield County charge to typical parents.
One thing just ask Jim, and I just want to make sure we clear this up. Head Start is a catchment area, and there are other towns that participate in the Danbury Head Start, but they're not, but they have classrooms in their own town. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it's correct. There are very few kids from the other school districts. I think that the total is less than 1 or 2%. So almost all of the children in the Danbury Head Start program are from Danbury.
So if I live in New Fairfield and I qualify, I could send them to the Danbury Head Start program.
You could, but that doesn't happen very often. And the reason it doesn't happen very often is because, as the superintendent was saying, most of the low-income families in the greater Danbury area actually live in Danbury. That's why you have 50% free and reduced school lunch. I should just amend one thing I said, so there's no confusion. The school readiness program, which is funded by the state, only provides childcare. One of the things that happens is, since it's co-coordinated with Head Start, the school readiness kids do get all the benefits of the Head Start program as well. And also, the school readiness program, unlike Head Start, is on a sliding fee scale basis. So it's a slightly different program, but they are cooperated together. And hopefully in the next 12 months, we'll be able to add another classroom or two.
There's a question up front here. And then...
Thank you. My name is Stephanie Fanning, and most of you have seen me over time. And I want to tell you, I come to these meetings, and I think I'm very depressed tonight. Because, you know, I've been part of this gifted and talented group that has lobbied for our gifted and talented children. And I thank you, because I feel like we've been heard. I see a line item for the gifted and talented, so I thank you for that. But I listen to these other issues that are going on. Listen to the mayor, how he doesn't have a lot of money. I know how I struggle to pay the budget, and as a taxpayer, the taxes were just due on February 1st, and we scrambled to pay those taxes, so I hear you. But the problem with our children is they don't stop growing. They're in kindergarten 1 year, before you know it, they're in high school. And if we, you, all of us, cannot get this job done, our legacy to our children is not a quality education that Dr. Sal was talking about. Maybe poor education, or maybe one that doesn't have freshman sports or whatever. So I applaud you, and I encourage you. If you want us to storm the Bastille in Hartford to get you more money, you let us know. Well, I'll organize something for you, and we'll all go up to see the governor. Because we do need our fair share of money. As the 7th largest town, you shouldn't be penalized for doing something well. You should be rewarded. And like I said, if you want us to storm the Bastille, I have experience with that. I stormed the Board of Education. We got a line item for gifted and talented, so thank you.
I guess you have a gift.
The only thing I wanted to say about that, Stephanie, look, kids, kids will always, we want kids to excel and do the best. But I mean, the glass is much more half full than it is half empty. I understand what your concern is, and I just want to say, look, I'm not saying I don't have any money. It's not about me. If I had the money, I would give it to you. It's about you. If you all have the money, and all of the residents of Danbury have the money, then they'll pay the bill, because you're going to pay the bill. And I just want to be clear that whatever we decide is coming directly out of the pockets of the taxpayers. So you've got to be careful about how we do that. That's all I'm saying.
I want to pick up on what Stephanie said also. It's been encouraging tonight to listen to the nature of the questions, because they've really stayed away from teaching and learning in terms of the core work that we do. I'd like to call your attention, if you would take your handouts to the last page with a line graph, where it talks about Danbury being efficient in dollars. There's a story here that's not being told, and I think it's critically important to get out. Let me just quickly go over the chart and explain what it really means. If you look at the green line, that's the amount of money that, on average, the state of Connecticut spends on kids for their education. If you look at the orangish red line, you'll see a term, DRG. That's probably confusing. That stands for District Reference Group. What the state realized a number of years ago is that school systems like Wilton and Weston and Avon and New Canaan, so on and so forth, are very different than school systems like Bridgeport, Hartford, New Haven, Waterbury. So they took us and they put us in district reference groups, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, Danbury, and I, the large urban cities. So we're in DRGH, and then if you look at the purple line, blue-purple line where it says Danbury, you'll see that we're not spending as much as on average as our DIRG or at the state level. However, here's the good news with this. When you look at our test scores, we outperform our district reference group. We're at the top of the chart of our district reference group because of the smart work and the hard work that our teachers and administrators are doing every day. And not only do we outperform our group, we are in the middle of the next group higher and at the bottom of the next group higher than that. So our performance level is dramatically higher than it should be in terms of per pupil spending. The other piece to bring out is that at the 3rd through 8th grade level, it kind of ties into what Jim Maloney was saying. The kids in Head Start, the kids in pre-K are really our kids. It's just 1 year away. And as Stephanie said, it happens like this. So in September, those kids are our incoming kindergarten youngsters, and in a few years, they take the Connecticut Mastery Test. 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. We shared with our board not too long ago, from the beginning of the current generation of the Connecticut Mastery Test to our test scores in the most recent administration, there were 60 areas tested. Danbury grew in all 60 areas, which is an unheard of accomplishment. It was actually a wonderful stat for this community to be able to put forward. So what we've done is we've kind of hunkered down. I do want to reiterate, I think we have a wonderful working relationship with the city council, the mayor's office, our board. We're really being very collaborative. When you hear about the number of people losing their homes, when you see what's happening to all of us in the room tonight and how difficult it's been at home, we've all had to tighten our belts. Everybody gets that. What's not being told, though, is that in spite of that, our kids are still flourishing. We've been cutting around the edges and cutting around the edges and cutting around the edges till we've been coming in on concentric circles. That's what we're really trying to mitigate against. We don't want to cut anymore. But please know that those center circles of the bullseye, in a sense, really are being attended to and attended to very well. And you don't have to take our word for it. You simply have to look at the data sets, 60 of 60 areas, and we grew in every one of those 60.
If I could just pipe in there for a quick second. One of the things that, when you look at that chart, when you compare us to the other communities in our educational reference group, now it's DIRG, used to be ERG, they're receiving to a town dramatically more money from the state than we are. I mean, and the fact is, if you look at the cutoff years, starting in about 07, our state dollars have not gone up. Now, the city investments continue, but the state has lagged behind, in fact, to the point where they're well behind the rate of inflation. So it just emphasizes how good a job that they're doing with not the same resources. Not like I mentioned at the start of this, in New Britain or another community that gets, in some cases, 2 or 3 times the amount of state aid that we get.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to step in. I was trying to be polite. Ann Rosleski, I'm a parent of 2, and for just some background, I am also an educator of 20-something years, and I think everyone in this room would agree that early intervention, whether it's a preschool program or full-day kindergarten, and research suggests this, that early intervention is needed and is expected, and it helps with scores, and some of us are very passionate about this. I don't think there was, I think we need to clarify something though, and that's, I'm thinking someone had this question, so I just want to make sure we clarify. The Head Start program, which somebody had mentioned was $700,000 funded by Danbury, is that required funding? I think that was the question, or that was the point, and I just want to know if you can clarify that. Is that required by law?
No. Jim?
No, it's not required by law.
Jim, I'm sorry, let me get you a mic. The answer to that question is, no, it's not required by law. Except the, I'll let you go with that.
It's not required by law. It is part of the package. The federal government gives the program money as well. The state makes a contribution to the program as well. And it is part of the package that allows us to put together the kind of quality program we have. I also, while I'm back here, I want to clarify something, a question the mayor asked. Not all of the Head Start children are in the schools. The program also has about 52 other children that are not in the schools, and that number is much larger than the number of kids from any surrounding towns that participate in the Head Start program. So we have 52 children, and we don't place kids in a school because they're from the neighborhood or from the town. Kids are placed where they're placed because of the parents' requests and try to accommodate the family's needs. So a kid from Danbury may very well be in a St. Peter's classroom, treated the same as a child anywhere else. But there are more children in the Head Start program in non-City of Danbury classrooms than there are in the program from other towns in Danbury.
Jim, just so we're all sitting here now talking by the fireside, if we didn't appropriate that amount of money for it, now I know we have grants. What are the grants? Quickly.
Board of Ed appropriates $585,000 in their budget, and we get an additional $955,000 from other sources.
Right, which goes to the program, right? So, just so for all of us, because we're all learning here today, make us smarter on what if the funding that we allocate out of the city budget isn't funded to you, but would you qualify for the other money? How does it impact the program?
I think the other money is money that the program is providing to the school system. The program pays the school system about $800 and some odd $1,000 a year. That's money that goes into the school system.
Now, we have our faculty.
Right.
That we pay for.
Right. And so you make a pot of money, this money that the program pays to the Board of Ed, the money that the Board of Ed pays into the program, not to the Head Start program, but internally within your own bookkeeping.
Okay, as Mark said,
you turn around and hire faculty and support staff in the classrooms. Without the Board of Ed's contribution of that $700,000, the program would not have sufficient staff to do the job the way it should be done.
So, so for Danbury, I know the mayor was asking me, and we were talking about it, the way it runs in Danbury, there are faculty on that really the district hires that work in the program. That money there goes to pay for their salary.
That's correct.
Correct?
That's correct.
Then the other money that is appropriated to your program itself runs the other parts of it.
Does two things. Runs the other part of the program and sends $800 and some odd $1,000 to the Board of Ed, which is that money that was just referred to coming into the Board of Ed.
To the federal grant.
That's right. And the state grant.
I don't know if you have any questions.
What does it net out to? What does it net out to? That's money coming in.
No. It nets out to the city of Danbury. The Board of Ed puts in about $700,000 into the Head Start program on an annual basis. Yes, it does. And it uses that money to hire Board of Ed staff, which are at the Head Start classrooms in Board of Education classrooms.
So does the Board of Ed staff participate, for example, in the employee insurance program?
Yes, they do.
So couldn't you, this is a question maybe you can't, wouldn't it be easier to hire your own staff and negotiate your own rates as far as insurance goes versus our plan, which is a Cadillac?
Yes, and we do that. We do that with the balance of the staff, and because this situation has existed for many years, 30 years, you've got people who are beginning to retire from the Board of Ed staff, and we have proposed to the superintendent that in fact that's one way of cutting additional expenses by gradually moving that staff over to the non-Board of Ed side of the program, and we're prepared to do that. We're openly in the middle of talking about doing exactly that. You can't do the whole thing all in 1 year.
We talked about that.
Okay.
This is a great example of the kind of deliberations that the Board of Ed has with the cabinet level staff. One piece I want to put a face on is for us for just a moment. Some of you know this research. Children who live in poverty kids who would be serviced by the type of program that Head Start or Readiness Program would service come to school with a 3,000 word vocabulary. Kids who have average income experiences come to school with a 5,000 to 7,000 word vocabulary. And kids who come from affluent homes come to school with 9,000 plus word vocabulary. So the first day of that child's kindergarten experience, their 13 years of academic experience, that achievement gap that we've been talking about is full-blown day one. From 3,000 words up to maybe 13,000 words, or 3,000 words up to 9,000 words. There is no way that we can catch those kids up, even over the course of many years. So the teachers have this dichotomy in front of them with some extraordinarily low-performing children, and some kids who are very high-performing, and then some kids kind of in the middle. So the financial aspect of this really has to be a conversation at the board level as the board and staff does its due diligence. But the instructional implications are profound on this. And so these are the kind of questions that communities look to and say, what is in the best interest of our children? What is in the best interest of the community at large?
Any other questions? We're going to stay here until you're all done, so I'm not trying to rush anybody out. The game was last night, the good game anyway.
Did the Giants win?
Did I mention he was interim to be fired? Okay, Gladys, would you like to wrap this up?
I'm sorry, I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I can't see.
It's hard for us to see on
my name is Sally Wilson. I'm a parent at King Street. And two questions, actually. Dr. Glass, one thing when you mentioned the DERG, and I guess group H, who exactly is in fact in that group?
Okay, Stanford, Norwalk, Norwich.
Ansonia, Derby, East Hartford, Meriden, and West Haven.
Thank you for that. And I wrote my second question because we're getting long-winded, sorry. I read an article in the paper, I'd say probably a few weeks ago, where it did in fact mention something that's already been discussed this evening about Millridge Intermediate being converted potentially into a middle school in the future. I know this isn't for next year, nor is it reflective on your budget for next year. But along with that, the article did mention that 4 elementary schools would also be affected, but it didn't in fact mention which elementary schools. And I guess my question is, what timeline are you looking at where we will in fact see this reflective on the budget, in which year? And also, has there been any discussion as to which schools will be affected by these increases in I guess, school sizes, where it mentioned in the article potentially 100 to 150 more students per school of these 4 schools?
Just to give you we're working on numbers for when eventually it will happen. That's one of the conversations the board has asked. Even if we receive the building, what's the impact financially? Because the impact, that's yearly on the budget. So so that part of it is coming, but that's 2 years away. I'll let the mayor talk about the other part because we had a meeting here this evening where they actually laid out a little timeline. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, everything is with a caveat because there's a lot of work that has to go into an expansion of the school building. You have to have geotechnical studies, architects got to look at it, engineers, so I just want you to understand that it could change, and you should really stay in touch with the board as well as with, in the paper to make sure you have the latest and the greatest, if you will. But right now, we're looking at creating really 3 clusters of schools to be able to allow us the greatest amount of flexibility and allow us to be able to manage where we have projections that will show a growing enrollment. If the enrollment never comes, no problem. If it does come the way we think it's going to come, then we'll be able to handle that, plus go back to having a common template for every elementary school. The common template for elementary school is to have a separate art room, a separate music room, a resource room, and whatever else is required under federal law in terms of special ed. We program that into each elementary school before we determine how many classrooms we're going to need. So if you're currently using music room as a classroom, it'll be restored back to being, a music room. So the areas we're looking at right now, what we think are the best candidates, if you will, for expansion, are Park Avenue, Shelter Rock, and Great Plain. Some of those will be bigger expansions than other expansions. Because, for example, Great Plain, we don't have a lot of land there, so we're not really necessarily going to be able to add a lot of rooms there, but we'll have enough to be able to handle some of the numbers of them. And then what will happen is you'll create partner schools with, for example, Park Avenue will be partnered up with Mill Ridge Primary and Morris Street, right? So that'll be one cluster of 3 schools, and then, you know, as students move into the district, we'll be able to program them to one school and they'll be able to stay there. We also have a very significant mobility rate. It's around 40%, so kids don't finish where they start. That's a problem for us, because if you look at like South Street, which is 85% full right now, and you look at Morris Street, you go, holy smokes, where do all these kids come from, and where do the kids from South Street go? A lot of them moved down to that area, got rented apartments on that side of the city, and that kind of thing. So we have to be really flexible with how we do this. So those are the 3 areas. Once that's been done, we'll then migrate over to Mill Ridge. The reason we want to do that is we want to create flex space at Mill Ridge Intermediate while we're working on those 3 clusters of buildings to be able to expand their footprint. And we'll need that flex space in case greater enrollment shows up while we're working on these buildings. We'll have enough classrooms there to be able to handle those kids while we're waiting for the construction to be finished. And once that's done, then we'll be able to work on Mill Ridge Intermediate and do the conversion, which may involve some renovations as well as modifications to make sure it can handle intermediate students. So that's sort of the plan. Now, the timeline, we're going to go to you guys, the voters, in November. We don't have any numbers yet because that all is determined by the architects and the engineers. I have a number in my head. I think it's going to be somewhere between $15 and $20 million, but I won't know until we actually program everything out and make sure that we've got all of our bases covered. I want a really tight, scoped project so I can say to the taxpayers, this is it, this is what it's going to cost you, this is the investment we're going to make, now let's go do it. That vote will happen in November. It's a presidential election. 85% of the voters are out voting. We think it has the best chance of passing then versus having a special referendum in the summer, and you don't really save any time because we're not going to get any construction work done this summer anyways. After that's done, we'll continue engineering and scoping out the projects, break ground in the spring of 2013, work throughout the summer, and be ready probably for the fall of 2014 for the elementary side, and then pull into the Mill Ridge work once we've set up all of our elementary schools. A lot of this is dependent on where we see the students coming, and based on 3 different consultants and a couple of different demographers, we feel that the peak of this bulge of students, if you will be around 2015, 2016, 2017. So we think we're going to have enough time to be able to get that accomplished. Now the last thing is once all that's done, then we got to start in the high school, because all those kids grow up and they finish middle school and they're going to go over to high school. So we've got to have a conversation about the years 16, 17, and 18 and about work we need to do in terms of the high school. But that's the plan. And we'll have more data, more information for you as we get closer to June. We're going to file our EDO form by June 30th, which puts us in line for state financing. The state will pick up about 40–45% of the cost of the project.
If there's no other questions at this time, we would like to thank you again for coming out. And if you have any additional questions, you can submit those to the superintendent of school. Or if you have a specific question for the mayor, you can call the mayor's office. We invite you to the Board of Ed meeting on Wednesday night where we will be having a continued discussion about the budget. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.